You as a business owner, you own the plan and you own the team, and make sure that the team is good enough to bring the A game to serve you, meet your goal of your mission that you have. How much is your risk appetite? Like not just your willingness to take risk, but your tolerance to take risk. For me, the two main factors are supply and demand. Main supply and demand, then we can really go into like how do we go study the supply element. Third element comes into play, which is the risk awareness.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, good morning, good evening for everyone who is watching our first episode of Property Dollar, and I'm delighted to have Rasti Vaibhav here with me, who is a stellar buyer's agent but also a wizard when it comes to property wealth and investment. So please welcome Rasti. Rasti, how are you?
Good, man. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Really
I'm so glad to have you. Have heard so much about you, like everywhere I go about understanding about the wealth, the investment part, and especially doing something outside New South Wales sometimes. I hear the name Rasti. Rasti is your guy, Rasti is the man. And obviously when I researched a little bit more about you, I saw that you are an author as well, an ex-banker, and an architect.
Yeah.
That's a deadly combination.
For me, that really made with the same rigor the way I changed from architecture to IT and IT to finance. With the same rigor, I went on the quest to find out how it works. So, no surprises, property came on the top, that's how people are doing it. But then I realized that lots of people do it or give an attempt to make wealth, or they end up buying one or two. But statistics says it all. 90% of average property investors have only one or two properties. 90% of investors.
The way you say that sounds like a bad thing? Or is it a good thing?
Yeah,
I don't know.
So my take is when somebody is investing in properties, they are really trying to make money out of it, right? I mean, why do people go invest in money in property? They really want their money, what they have, to multiply, right? Like I'm putting, so for example, I buy a property of 600K. I want it to become 700, 800, 900 on the way. Now, if we have gone through that hassle of understanding how it works, and if it's really working for them, why wouldn't they go and buy another property of 600K? And if it is working again, why wouldn't they go and do it again for third property, fourth property? So the point I'm trying to make is that if they are able to make it for one property and it's working for them, they should be doing more. But the sorry truth, as per the Australian Bureau of Statistics, 72% of property investors have only one investment property.
And why do you think that is? Why do you think that, A, yes, the stat is alarming, B, is if they are able to have enough equity to buy another one, why are they not doing it?
Great question. Great question. So just adding on to that statistics, 72 have one investment property, 18 have two investment properties.
18%
18%
of Australians?
No, 18% of Australian property investors.
18% of Australian property investors have two properties.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 90% of property investors, in a way, are not able to go beyond their one or two properties. But on the other hand, it's less than 1% of property investors who are able to build a successful portfolio of 5 or more properties.
Really, it's less than 1%?
Less than 1%.
Wow.
So,
and it's ABS. It's
ABS, Australian Bureau of Statistics, right? So to put things in context, if we have 1,000 property investors in our room, it is less than 10 people among them who have 5 or more properties.
So Rasti, what are they doing right, and what is the rest of the 90% doing wrong?
Great question. And that was a quest I was on.
Right.
And I did 14 months of research, literally, when I had this idea of doing something or understanding. Because for me, again, it goes back to my learning philosophy that let's learn what successful people are doing, where you really want to go. And I'm thinking I want to build wealth. And then, oh, this is done by only 1%. So what's the difference? Exactly the same question I had in my mind. And I spent 14 months with the same rigor, the way I changed my careers a couple of times then, to find out what the successful people are doing. Just to let you know, people who are actually able to make, if you look at the BRW top 200 rich people list in Australia, 40% of people have made wealth through properties.
And those 40% would be the
Totally.
less than 1% of
Totally.
investors.
So the point I want to make is that yes, it's a very small percentage, but when they are able to make it, they are making huge. So there's certainly something out there that is putting them, a class apart, or as in statistics apart from the rest. So I started reading lots of books. Name it any book, I would have read it, digested so well, and then went for seminars, paid, unpaid, went for mentorships, coaching, because I really want to learn first. And the answer I came across was only two words answer.
Which is?
Which is strategy and due diligence.
Right.
And just to very quickly elaborate on those elements, strategy is like having a plan, having a GPS with you. Like imagine like we are going out on a road, we really want to go somewhere. Yes, we have petrol in our car, we have a good car, we want to go for a spin. Lots of people feel that, yes, let's go for a drive. And that is typically an average property buyer is doing. They think that I got equity in my property, I got money in my super, I want to buy a property, let's go. It's like equivalent to saying, I got a car, I got a fuel in my fuel tank, let's go for a drive.
Where go, don't know.
Yeah, so that's the other element, right? So on the other side, if we have something called GPS, whereby we are putting exactly where I want to be, which is my end goal, and then let GPS define the optimal pathway. And when I say optimal, what I mean is that it's based on your preferences. Do you want to take a toll road? Do you want to take a scenic route? Do you want to meet someone on the way? And now how much, just as a general discussion, like how many people would actually make it to their destination without a GPS? So there are certain things comes to my mind, or generally speaking, when we do not really have clarity, it slows us down.
Yep.
When I come across our road, roundabout, I do not know where to go. There are a couple of options. A, I'll stop there. I do not know. I won't move. Second, I might go half-heartedly somewhere with the hope that this might be the right answer.
Yep.
Right. So for me to be reaching my goal in that scenario, I have to be super, super lucky. But here the stakes are high. We are really talking about borrowed money.
Yep.
So people don't want to rely on the luck so much, and which is a great thing that people, either you have to be super lucky to really make it all the way, or you don't go on the journey.
But obviously your methods won't be playing on luck. You would have certain kind of, dare I say, the blueprint.
Yeah, exactly.
So with that blueprint, if someone is having two properties, an investor is having two properties in Australia, and he comes to you, he goes, Rasti, look, I have got two properties. I'm doing very good in life.
Yep.
I've got everything. Two properties here. How do you start your conversation with that person? How do you tell that person, look, yes, if that's what you want, this is it. But have you ever thought about doing what the 1% is doing? And then what's the journey from there on?
Sure, no, great question. So to me, it's never about comparing with anyone. Somebody might have 5 properties, somebody might have 10 properties. There's no benchmarking. The benchmarking should be for that individual with themselves. Can we do better from where we are today? Otherwise, it becomes unnecessary rat race, right? So I would always say, going back to the discussion, that we don't want to be lucky, but rather we want to be planning. The first thing that I would say, that take this as your business. This is your business, rather than taking as a passion or just a hobby or just as a side gig on the side hustle. No, it's a proper business. And that really, the reason I'm saying this is because if this is your business, now all those things that we have heard about businesses to make it successful comes into play. As an example, if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. Right? Now, we are talking about this business of property investing, and lack of plan tells me that I might get stuck after some time. Right? Second element of it, when we are talking about business, we are not doing everything on our own. We get people who are experts, who are supporting us in the journey, and they work in harmony with each other to make the business happen. And you as a property investor, you as a business owner, you own the plan and you own the team, and make sure that the team is good enough to bring the A game to serve you, meet your goal of of your mission that you have. So now all of a sudden, with the business mindset, things are simple, clear in their eyes. So now it's not so much so about, okay, where do I go from here? The question is, where do you want to reach? So it's a long-term planning. And then what is the best optimal pathway? Because you can do the same thing in multiple ways. And sometimes it's not really about right or wrong approach. The question is more around what's the most optimal pathway for us to get there. And in context of property investing business, it really comes down to how much you can borrow. Leverage is the critical part.
Yep.
How much is your risk appetite? Like not just your willingness to take risk, but your tolerance to take risk. Right? And then of course it's a multi-year process, multi-year journey. So there's certainly what you have in the pocket today, but also what your saving plan looks like, what taxation system you are in, what's the structure we need to have. Now we really need to build a team around, so for example, a strategist who can really bring it down to actionable items, and that's that's the strategic thinking part, and then the due diligence around, okay, what structure we need to buying that property in, who is the loan provider, what sort of loan structure we need to have, where we should be buying. If things goes wrong, what are the what if scenarios? Are we really losing our sleep around it? Or we know this is part of the business, not because there's a business planning around it.
Right. So from the crux of it, I think the process of getting into the wealth business, from a property point of view, you have to think about obviously your borrowing capacity. So you have to think about how banks operate, how the loan operates, how the mortgage business operates. Then you have to think about your savings. So you need to have proper saving plan, how much money you need to keep. Taxation is one very important thing that people forget, like how important tax is. You need to understand the tax system and how it works in favor or sometimes against, etc. For property investors. Maybe then also understand, from my point of view, is some research around your own suburb, some research around population, demographics. But I think that all is taken care of someone like you. Like you do the research and you bring in each and every attribute that should help your client to make the right decision.
Exactly right. So what we have done in our business as a Get Real Properties, as an independent buyers agency, we tend to play two roles, or we wear two hats. One, that of a strategist. What it means is, just like what I was talking about, let's work out your long-term goals. Let's work out your strategy. Let's build your GPS, where you are, where you want to go, how many properties in how many years you should be buying with your circumstances, and still keeping it nimble. Not really having a big picture and not really practical doesn't make sense. We need to be, as I said, need to beat ourselves, our better version. We need to find that version first, right? So again, as a concept, we need to build that first. So that's what we do. We come up with a strategy, and then out of that strategy, of course, we're not really buying multiple properties in one go. We need to build sequentially one, just like in GPS journey, we take one turn at a time. So the GPS is telling us, okay, let's go and buy our type of property, maybe say this budget, say 600K budget, with this kind of cash flow, this much of negative gearing, this much of maintenance issues that we can expect, this much of risk buffer we need to have. Let's buy this kind of property. This becomes more of a mandate of the strategic thinking. And then the second part of is now executing on it. And that means that Australia is a huge country, 15,000 plus suburbs, towns in this country. Lots of people make a mistake. They tend to buy in their own backyard because they think they know about it. For sure they know about it, but sometimes you do not know what we don't know. Maybe, in Sydney siders, buying in Perth or buying in Brisbane might make much more sense. Relatively speaking, because now it's a business approach. Yes, there's a cost behind it, that of cost of not feeling so confident. Similarly, the cost of the loan structure, like should I pay LMI or should I not pay LMI? To me now, because it's a business, let's talk about the cost of LMI. Let's talk about benefits of LMI. Now, if the benefits outweigh the cost, let's go for it. Kind of a thing, right? So that's the strategic thinking. Once done, then it's more about due diligence, finding the right area or the right region where there's more disbalance, not just today, but in the moving forward in the future, that there's more demand compared to supply in the market. Economics 101 tell us when there's more demand, less supply, prices will go up. Right? And there's a lot of driving factors around it. The growth, the population, the infrastructure, the money, surplus, and the likes, which we really go deep into the economic structure of it. And then doesn't mean that we can go and buy any property in that area. Because lots of people ask me this question, that should we buy in Brisbane or should we buy in Perth? I ask them, are you buying the whole Brisbane? Are you buying the whole Perth? Of course not. So yes, it's a region. Let's pick the region on the fundamentals basis. But then we really need to go deep down on the economics of the street that we are buying the property in.
From a macro level, what are the top 5 attributes you keep in mind while picking up a suburb in a particular city?
Yeah, so first of all, it really comes back to the strategy. Like, we are not really picking any region. It has to be coming in compliance to what the strategic mandate is. As an example, if if the mandate is $2 million, I'm looking at different regions altogether. There's a lot of huge filter out there already.
Yeah, so if you want to make like bucket loads of money, you wouldn't start with Perth or Brisbane. You will start with somewhere around Sydney, where obviously that kind of thing, right? But if you initially your portfolio goal is around 2 million, 3 million, 1.5 million, then you can start somewhere around Adelaide, Brisbane. I don't know. You would know.
Yeah. So coming back to the question, so what I meant was that I really want to look at the drivers in context of the personal journey, right? It has to be compliant with that. To me, that's a make or break, because then what we are doing otherwise, we are decoupling the strategic thinking, what we have done. So we bring it back. So for me, the 2 main factors are supply and demand. Main supply and demand. Then we can really go into like, how do we go study the supply element? How can we go study the demand element, right? So really talking about, of course, there's a lot of indicators that, again, as a data scientist, and me really look at all the factors. But primarily what we need to think about is what sort of split we really want of cash flow and capital growth. Because again, that's also an element, because someone who's probably at accumulation stage, they really want to build their wealth, they really need to go primarily more focused on the capital growth side. So that's what I'm saying. It goes back to our mandate.
What you basically want. Right. What do you want? Okay.
So that's where the third element comes into play, which is the risk awareness. Lots of people tend to, I guess, not value that too much, but that's an important part, because we are borrowing money. So the risk should be as minimal as possible.
Right.
Because we get rewarded for the risk, so we need to take risk. That's why we are investing. But how much is the calculated risk that we are prepared to take on? We talked about tax, for example. Now the equation is, yes, negative gearing is helping us. But what if negative gearing is taken off? Does it really still makes a good...
You think negative gearing will be taken off? What's Rasti's opinion?
Sensibly, politicians should really leave it away. It will so much distort the market that it will become... Of course, the market will move very quickly, just on that topic, because lots of people, lot of rent investor, they choose to go for rent investing because the element of negative gearing. All of a sudden, we take that off, there will be more inclination for people to buy their own home rather than doing rent investing. So all of a sudden, we have taken away the demand for rental properties. Because when we have taken away the demand, the supply will adjust very quickly. Because now when there are less people buying rental properties, what will happen? Suppliers will say, or the builders or developers might say, look, let's not build those kind of properties anymore. But the country here, when we saw 480,000 people coming just last year as a new population, they're not really coming to buy a property on the day one. You and I know we will take 2-3 years at least to buy property. So that means we need to have the rental market. And there was a research done, and it simply says that just changing those negative gearing rules, if really government has to do something, they're better off changing the rules around the zoning. Because zoning means that make it more affordable, like allow them to build granny flat on the back, because that's a dwelling. Because people, I mean, Australia is a huge country. People, they can build the whole town wherever. But the problem is that people like to live close to the amenities or the job centers.
That's right.
So it's a density issue.
So you reckon if tomorrow this changes, this negative gearing thing changes, taken away, it will hugely negatively impact the rent market? It will.
I mean, we are already seeing 10.2% of rental increase over the last year. 10.2% is a huge number.
Because a logic dictates, if you're, dare I say the word, if you're punishing the investors, they will go out of the investment market, and then you will have lesser rental properties, which will increase the rent.
Yeah. Look, to me, it's not just about the rent, because rent is more about tenant paying and landlord winning, right? To me, there's a bigger problem, and this is what the government looks at. All of a sudden, there is a stress around it. Like, rent is not affordable, and it's not solving the problem, because we need more homes, more dwellings. I'm not talking about the pricing, I'm talking about the dwellings. I mean, to me, the bigger problem is there will be less rental properties in the market for new immigrants to come and live. So that means we are building up the stress around it. And for a healthy society, things need to be balanced. And of course, landlord will win because the rents are increasing and whatever existing dwellings are there, but there's no new supply coming in, or relatively speaking, less supply coming in.
So I read this post from our dearest Chris Mintz, and he has a plan to beat the supply challenge. And I think around train stations.
Yes.
I may be misquoting some things, but people can go and research it. Don't quote me on that. But that's what his plan is, I think, to introduce more multi-tenancy or high-density dwellings, which are a bit more affordable, I would say, closer to the amenities. What do you think about that plan?
And that is exactly what I was referring to when I said changing the zoning, basically taking away the restrictive elements of building. As an example, saying instead of going only double story, if our premier allows them to build multi-story at the same time, it's basically bringing more density there. That is certainly going to go a long way, but it also means for the investor, because the question is like what it means to the investor as of today. It really means that the quality of the purchase needs to be more paramount now. A property which can be developed further has a lot more scope, a lot more potential to give more returns. So understanding the simple nuances, that what can be developed, what are the rules around it, what are the easements or covenants in there, because we know this will going to happen. I mean, that is probably one of the easy solution, just changing the zoning rules. And government has smartly, in my opinion, this is just my personal opinion, has smartly done it in a very easy, as in very deliberate way. Yes, government wants to make things affordable, because sometimes it's a vote bank, sometimes it's the right thing to do for the citizens. Being a huge country, yet we have very little job centers as in density wise. And that's what the whole planning, and that's what we do as a buyer's agent. We study the strategy of what government is going to do. As an example, Bridges Creek Airport, as we see as a second alternate airport in Sydney, it was not really afterthought. It was not really something that they realized that we not to do it. It was on planning papers over last 15, 20 years. They had that reserved land, the plans over there, a lot longer than people think. It was not really an overnight decision that, okay, let's go for a Bridges Creek Airport. So that means if we already know what might happen in the future, and that's what, growth driver is exactly that. What we study is infrastructure projects or potential of projects, because it's a long-term purchase, what we are buying. I mean, property is supposed to be a long-term hold forever. It's because it's intergenerational. Lots of people, again, this is the message I would like to give to the audience is, people tend to look and ask that, okay, what is the growth area we should be buying today? But the problem with that approach is that they tend to look for only short-term gain. Like, where can I go and make some equity within the next
How can I become a millionaire tomorrow?
So idea is that let's go small steps, consistent steps, build a diverse portfolio. Because today Brisbane is on the rise, tomorrow Perth is on the rise. It's more about let's build exposure in a consistent way so that we have a diverse portfolio approach, so that risk gets minimized as a way of diversification.
So can I ask you, and I want your candid opinion on these things, right? Okay, rise of buyer's agents.
Yes.
Right? Back in the days, we had real estate agents and we have mortgage brokers.
Yes.
Right? And then sometimes banks, if you're getting a good deal directly with the bank. Now there is another breed coming in, buyer's agents, right? And I don't know if a lot of people have seen or interacted with a lot of buyer's agents. I think I get a feeling I can ask this question to you because I get a vibe of you're like a teacher. You won't be annoyed with my annoying questions.
Go for it. Nothing is annoying.
But what I've seen, and talking to some of our customers as well. They're good buyers agents.
Yes.
And obviously they are not so good buyers agents, right? And what they do, and this is again coming straight from the customers, right? Like what you said is you work around the strategy of the customer, right? What does customer want? And then you educate the customer, and then you design a strategy tailored to that customer. But what we have seen with others as well, sometimes they go like, I want to do this, I want to do that, and they just go straight away, no, that's a stupid strategy. And being so blunt and being so direct about what customer wants is their strategy to get that customer. Because sometimes fear compels customer to spend money. Because it's like you go to doctor, you say, hey, listen, I'm doing this, my blood pressure is high, what do you think? No, this is wrong. You should stop it right now. Oh, what should I do? You should take this medicine. Of course, here you go, my money. So we are seeing that as well. Has that been your experience as well? And from one of the best buyer's agent, what are your thoughts? What are the good points of a buyer's agent? What buyer's agent shouldn't do?
No, great question, by the way. Great question. So just to put some like I'm a numbers person, as you could probably see. Yeah. About 95% of people, when they are selling the property, they use a selling agent.
Yeah, real estate.
Right? So almost 19 out of 20 people are using a real estate sales agent to sell the property. What is the reason, before we get into the buyer side, is the seller want to sell the property and extract maximum price possible. Right? But before he does that, he goes over the overview of all the sales agent in the area. Right? And all the sales agent will actually pitch to the seller, I got this services, right? I'll market this way and I'll get this price. Let's say they did all the research and they signed up with an agency. Now it's agency's job to meet the expectation, or probably beat the expectation of the seller.
Yep.
Because for them it's a reputation that matters, and good on them, and that's the profession. They have chosen to work with the seller, and their best interest is as a business as well as individual, because their remuneration is attached to the sales price. So their job is to sell the property and also get maximum price possible. Now, on the other side, there's a buyer.
Yep.
Buyer says that, oh, I'm done with the renting, I'm paying so much rent, and then the landlord says, vacate the property, now I better go and buy a property on my own. I really want it soon. So they start doing research. They go on open homes, they go on domain.com.au or realestate.com.au or other websites. They immerse themselves and start talking to the social network, like where they are doing, what others are doing. And all of a sudden they start believing that they're building the sense of what they should do and what they should not do. They might go to the bank or a broker, they try to work out their capacity. Broker or bank might try to work out the maximum borrowing capacity. I mean, borrowing capacity means the upper limit. But guess what? The buyer is listening. If I have capacity of 800, I shall go and buy a 800K property, right? I mean, this is how probably sometimes things are pitched. Best interest for the buyer, or sorry, for the bank or for the broker to go for that limit. Now buyer says, all right, I got money, I got deposit, and there's a scheme going on from the government. And now they are saying, okay, let's go and start doing some research. Research means jumping on the website, going on open homes. They see Andrew as an example. He sees Andrew on the door, checks him in, he talks about his requirement. Andrew might say, oh, this is not your property. He sees Andrew some other weekend and says, oh, this is not your property. And you start chit-chatting, you get familiarized with those people. One day Andrew calls him and says, oh, buddy, this is the property you have been looking for. Now buyer feels, this is it. Because Andrew has said no to me before. He's so genuine. Of course he might be, don't get me wrong. But he has built a trust as a buyer and selling agent who is professionally, ethically, legally representing the seller.
I see.
Right? So now what we're really talking about, a professional, the best professional on the other side, with the emotional buyer on this side, bringing all the stakes in the game and putting on something which he might not have the appreciation of what the value is and what he should do. So all of a sudden it's it's not a level field. Professional and emotional buyer. typically a buyer spend about 3-4 months just to realize what he wants. Because he goes on the open home, because he doesn't know what 800K in this example will buy him. So he'll go, he might be, start getting ready for making an offer. He sees that he's missing out, so he'll change his requirements that 800 will not buy him in this, so let's go further out. It takes about 3-4 months if you're very active. So at one stage he might say, oh, look, I'm done with this exercise. I really want to take my son for soccer or my daughter for netball or get my life back. And they are really coming to the point that, okay, maybe not 800, maybe 820 will buy this. So I say 20K, I'll get my life back, let's go for it. So this is just a general scenario where this gentleman goes and buy the property. Now, the sole reason why the seller is using a selling agent is the same reason, or maybe a lot more, for the buyer to use a professional to just level the playing field.
Yep.
Because now the buyer agent needs to understand what this gentleman wants to buy. He needs to understand what the market has to offer. So now coming back to what is buyer's agent, a good buyer's agent attributes, the first prime most is understanding the requirements of the buyer.
Right.
So who can really bring the personalized, subjective plan for this person? I'm not talking about building a portfolio buying multiple properties. I'm just saying, what is his ideal property? Giving the options. Because if this guy, a buyer, becomes too friendly with Andrew, what is going to say? Okay, I've got 3 more properties coming in. Let's wait. So all of a sudden he has said no to other agents putting properties in the market. Whereas someone who can understand the requirement is one element. Second element is that they should be independent. And when I say independent, which is pretty loose word, but there's a lot of scenarios when there's a lot of
They shouldn't
scenarios
have biases.
biases and the kickbacks for whatever reason.
Yep.
Because what we have seen is that lots of developers, when they're building a new estate, they, instead of putting money in the marketing campaigns, they say to people out there that I've got this product, if you bring a seller or buyer of this property, I'll give you this much kickback.
Yep.
Not ethical, not legal, but we see people in those
They're doing it? People? Yeah?
big time.
So that's the attribute of a bad buyer's agent. There
So
you go.
it's independent and independent, someone who's consultative, plus someone who has a big database of the sales agent. Because at the end of the day, as a buyer's agent, our asset is the relationship with the sales agent. Lots of people think, just to clarify, that seller wants to sell the property at the maximum price possible and sell the property. So his job is to sell the property and get the maximum price possible. Us as an independent buyer's agent, our job is to buy the property at the lowest level possible. Now people really challenge, it gets challenging. How can we work together? Because we are at a different level, right?
Yep.
The same, we want to go lower.
Yep.
Lots of people actually miss that part, that we actually work so hand in hand together. Because sometimes when we're really talking about a business deal, it's all about winning. It's always about win-win. If it is something for you in this deal,
Needs to be something
for me.
for the other party as well.
Yeah.
As Chris Voss says, the good negotiation is where everyone wins.
Exactly. So it's
Otherwise
finding the
not a
win-win,
negotiation.
right?
Yep.
So for us as a buyer's agent, it's really about, is it just about the price? Or is it something more than that? Sometimes the speed is very critical. Sometimes the privacy, which is very important for the seller. If I go and I take this person on board and I say, okay, I got this property and I'm happy to do the deal tomorrow, but at my preferred pricing. So what I'm giving is the speed, which doesn't really matter too much to me. Probably he also wants the speed, but what he's listening is that, oh, this offer is on board at this price, maybe not the preferred price, but a deal happening tomorrow, the certainty in the deal. Because as a buyer's agent, we have to qualify the buyer. Are they finance approved? Do they know how to read the report? Would they not change their mind? Because they can go on board and buy the property with a cooling off period with all sorts of clauses. Selling agent hates that kind of scenario whereby the deal is done only to come back in the market because the finance failed.
Finance failed. Yeah. And how do you get paid? How do buyer's agent get paid?
Being independent means that we are not really getting any kickbacks from anywhere.
Yeah.
What it means is if I'm serving this gentleman as a buyer, I'm getting paid by the buyer.
And is there a percentage they have to pay you, or is there a fixed
Yeah,
fee?
so it's a different pricing model. I mean, of course, every buyer's agent have different. What we have is a hybrid model.
Yeah.
So for a particular level, that particular threshold level, it's a fixed fees. Anything beyond that becomes a percentage.
Right. And obviously, I would assume if it's a bigger portfolio, you need to do a lot of research from your end. So obviously that will demand for a little bit of a higher fee than just saying that, okay, I just need to buy my first home here, go and find something for me.
It's counterintuitive, actually.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm saying it's counterintuitive is because when we go start buying the property at the lower end, actually there's a lot more work in that.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So as an example, buying a decent property of about $450,000, a brick home, 4-bedroom, double garage, that means we are not finding those properties in metros areas, right? Like we are really going further away, maybe to regional area. Now, regional area market doesn't go by the sentiment of the market. It really goes by the fundamentals, right? And finding the right property, right deal over there, where it's not so much mature the way we see metros. We really need to understand the vacancy and the risk around it. The risk gets elevated just by the virtue that it's not metro.
Why are people after brick homes?
Great question. So it's more around the maintenance side of things. Like in the sense that a brick home is perceived, especially when it is double brick, it is perceived to be a lot more stable.
But that's only available in Perth, isn't it? Double brick.
But no, look, it's not the case. Like this is where, the element that how do we go about finding the right property is more around finding something which is built for the owner-occupier. And I'll tell you, because this is a very big distinction to bring down the risk and elevate the chances of better growth. And that is, always think as if you're buying for the resident in the area, like for your tenant, for someone who will buy the property later on of you, or even for the valuer. I'll talk about that in a minute, but that's a critical part. So what we are saying is, because this is your business, and we all know as a business person, keep the persona of your client always visible so that we can do and execute things accordingly. Here, as a business owner, we are acquiring an asset that will be leased out. So what is the preference of that person? Yes, we are so used to living in a 4-bedder, but maybe in that demographic that we are buying, it's a small family and they are happy with a 2-bedder or 3-bedder. So buying a 4-bedder in that area is actually overcapitalization. It will not make much of a difference. Yes, extra bedroom. I will not mind extra bedroom, provided I'm not paying the huge amount of premium for it, because everything comes down the cost. So having an understanding that who is the owner-occupier of that property eventually, what will we be thinking about it? Not thinking about you as an investor in the shoe over there, because lots of people think, oh, I'm not able to buy a $1.5 million good home here, and I'm thinking about $500K there, let's go and buy it. Without realizing they could have done better even at $450 there. So making it decoupled from your own personality and thinking of an end user of that property is the critical part. Now, coming back to the question of double brick or single brick or clad, of course, clad needs maintenance. Right? I mean, the clads, it's like they're not too stable. As an example, relatively speaking, everything being equal, brick homes are a lot more stable and they're more easy to repair or maintain.
Right.
So it really comes down to not the cost of buying the property, but the cost of the holding the property as well. Brick home being stable,
less maintenance
cost,
lower risk.
Lower risk.
Come to think of it, if every buyer has a buyer's agent in Australia, every buyer will negotiate a better price, and then we may actually cool off a little bit of property prices.
Great.
You remember the days when real estate agents, they will ask any price, right? This is the price, and then sometimes people will come in and they will outbid that price, right?
Happens all the time, not the old days, even today.
And if you have buyer's agents everywhere who can educate, buyer's agent like you, who can educate customers on what would be the right price for this one, it can actually have a positive impact on our property market.
Totally. And just to give a bit of context, I talked about 95% people using a sales agent. Guess how much people are using buyer's agent as of today?
I don't know. How much?
Less than 3%.
Really?
Less than 3%.
It might be the case because we don't have enough buyer's agent.
Look, it's more about the awareness. It's about awareness. Like we are growing because we have, by way of education, there's more demand. Just for our business, of course, it's really building up. So if you look at overseas, whether you go to US, whether you go to Europe, or even to India for that matter, there's an equal representation of the buyer and the seller. Equal representation.
Agents.
Agents. Because they are allowed to work as a buyer or a seller, the same agency. Here, it's a bit different. All the household names, all the names that we see, they're real estate sales agents.
Do buyer agents require a license?
Yes, we have the same license as a real estate agent.
Okay. And without a license, you can't.
No, we
you
can't.
just can't.
Not ethically, not legally, no.
Do you think there are buyers agents out there doing it without a license? No comments. Too controversial.
Look, there are people who are doing it.
Yeah.
And really comes down to, I guess, the system that they're using as well. Like lots of people, and this is where we really need to be mindful, lots of people are getting into the education program, telling about the wealth creation and talking about property as a vehicle. And then they have a supplier behind them and saying, look, there's a new acreage coming up, there's a new project coming in, let's go and buy it. They might or might not charge the buyer, but there's huge, I guess, referral bonus coming in behind it, to the extent that we have been referred by so many developers saying, oh, we have a beautiful product. Why don't you let your buyers know? Essentially saying, why don't you sell our product?
Yep.
That makes us a sales agent rather than the buyer's agent.
The buyer's agent. And so, that's ethically wrong. And
so
legally
being independent is the critical part.
Yeah, being independent.
Really, and it goes back to my reason why I've done this. Like when I was in finance world, when I built my portfolio, I was on a decent role, managing a decent amount of money for my institutional clients. The reason I jumped in doing this business is purely on the premises that what I had to go through as a challenge, whether building my own career with nothing in my pocket and with a desire, and then jumped off the few hoops on the way.
Yep.
I believe I'm in a very fortunate position to be able to serve that as a mentor to some people out there, talking about the strategy and the due diligence and bridging the gap of not knowing, so bringing that awareness. And that's what we really are into. Like the concept that I'm talking about is actually very well captured in the book.
Yeah.
The Property Wealth Blueprint. Like
and
how do we go?
We'll come to this book. I've last few questions before we end this, right? So, sometimes, and it's just a perception, right? Even if when we are going to the gym, we want to look at a coach who is well built, right? Which has got nothing to do with a good coach or a bad coach, right? It's amount of research and certifications and experience that coach has, not necessarily he's a bodybuilder or she's a bodybuilder. In same way, for buyer's agents, sometimes people go like, okay, well, you're a buyer's agent, tell me your portfolio. How big are you? Oh, you haven't got any property. Oh, okay, now you're buyer's agent. So you haven't developed a portfolio and you are teaching me how to develop a portfolio. Is that the right way to look at a buyer's agent?
In a way, yes.
It is. Okay.
Because I cannot learn swimming just by looking at the YouTube videos. I need to put myself deep down in the water, feel confident, then for me to say that I know swimming. But here, it's not about me knowing the swimming. I probably can do whatever. It's about the systematic approach and being consistent in the results.
Yeah.
Right? Theory is different, practical. When the emotions come into play, if you look at the whole psychology of investor, it's boom to bust, and things goes differently. Like yes, we are borrowing money, going for the negative gearing, and then we see the interest rate going up. I've seen so many people who are so desperate to sell the property off now. Again, another statistics: 50% of property investors sell the property back in the market within first 5 years.
Right. 50%.
50%. So half of the people sell back the property within first 5 years.
Do you reckon is that because of the turbulence in the economy, or is it just that they want to have the short gains, get the money, and then move forward?
No, it's more around not knowing what they're getting into. Whether they're picking the wrong property in the wrong area, paid probably too much, not following the strategy. So they are more, impulsive or more more of a reactionary element to it, rather than being proactive and thinking about the what-if scenarios. Like, as an example, I got a decent portfolio. Interest rate moved up. For me, that was an opportunity to buy more. Rather than thinking, okay, what's the market is doing? Because
okay, let's dwell on this one. This one is interesting, right? Interest rate is rising, and you see that as an opportunity to buy more. Why is that?
Okay. Who says my interest rate is going up? Because we saw
RBA.
Yeah, because we saw where it was, 0.1% to where it is. So there's a lot of rises happened over the last 2 years, right?
Yeah.
is the question is that I will ask is it really rising or is it normalizing? There's a difference between the two.
Yeah.
Depending on what lens you look at, certainly is rising from 0.1 to where it is 4.35, right? But if I say the average has been since post GFC has been around that mark, about 4.7, 4.8, to me it's still under. And the reason I say this with a lot of conviction is that we are buying property for long term. We are buying for the next 10, 20, 30 years.
Interesting.
Right? When we are buying for something for the long run, why am I worried about the short window?
For our audience, can I say that that's so important to understand that buying property is a long-term investment.
Yep.
The only reason I say that is because a lot of people in our audience will go like, I'll wait till the interest rate goes down. If you buy this time, this is stupid, right? There are people who are scared about the interest rate, to which I say, you buy when you're ready.
And exactly right. Exactly right. And look, and this is where the strategic planning comes into play, because in our strategic planning, we're really talking about where you are, but more importantly, we are dwelling on where you want to go. And to bridge the gap really comes down the understanding of the risk, understanding the leverage, understanding the savings plan. And then it's personal. So not only it's long term, it's the time in the market, but the best part of Australia as a country, which really makes lots of millionaires through real estate in this country, is that it's not one market. It's not one market compared to what media makes us believe into. Because media can only report on the median of a state or median of the city, like what Sydney market is doing. But believe it or not, Sydney by itself has multiple markets within the markets. What Southwest region is doing is nothing to do with what eastern suburbs are doing.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
That's true.
It's a different thematics, there's a different demography, there's a different audience, different type of properties. So, and this is the thing, this is just within Sydney. Now, if that's where the property market cycle study needs to be done, and that's again an attribute of a buyer's agent to know the market, not where it is today, where it is leading towards, with huge conviction. Nobody knows, nobody has a crystal ball. If somebody says crystal ball, run away.
Yeah, run away. Which reminds, okay, so I think there are 4 factors you need to think to separate a good buyer's agent from a bad buyer's agent. I hope I remember all 4. So number 1 is please make sure that they have a license. They have a license to operate as a buyer's agent. Number 2 is please make sure they don't have biases or they're not getting kickbacks from developers or anyone else. So they're doing the research and everything to keep you in mind. So your success is their success, right? Number 3 is that they have played this game. So they are professional. They have gone deep inside this market. They have failed. They have succeeded. They've got their own portfolio. They're leading by example, right? And number 4 you just mentioned was
knowing the market drivers and where it is playing.
Knowing the market drivers and they're not saying they're not doing the crystal ball thing, because God knows whenever the economist says something is going to happen, it never happens.
Look, the thing is that just on that point, nobody knew GFC was around the corner.
Exactly.
Nobody knew COVID was going to happen. The key thing is now, because it's your business plan, there has to be a plan B, there has to be plan C. To the extent, which probably I've mentioned in the book as well, that there has to be exit plan. Nobody lives off number of properties. People really need the money in their pocket. For them to go on cruise, they need to pay money.
Yeah.
So there has to be a plan around the whole journey around it.
Absolutely. And speaking of the strategy about buying property, building wealth, I would like to mention this amazing book that I have read halfway through, which is The Property Wealth Blueprint, and this is the best-selling author on Amazon. One thing I really love about this book is that it is so easy to understand and read, because it's so well written that you read one line, you want to read the next, and then you want to read the next, and then you want to know what's in the next chapter. I think if you dedicate, you can actually finish it in 2 days. And there are some really nice, good points that you can use straight away in your buying journey. But what I would recommend is, yes, getting this book. The link is in the description section of this video. But here's the other thing that you can get this book by. If you download Property Dollar today, and email us at info@propertydollar.com.au and tell us one feature that you like about Property Dollar. We will post this to you free of charge. Okay, so I'll repeat that. Once you download Property Dollar and email us your favorite feature at info@propertydollar.com.au, we will send you a free copy of this amazing book. Okay, with that, I gotta ask, because of course this is Property Dollar. Have you used Property Dollar?
Yes, I have.
What do you think?
Look, I'll go back to my own analogy. I was talking about GPS. Now, as an example, we start with the journey. We have a GPS. Somebody has told me the plan. I'm going over there. Now, wouldn't you want a dashboard in front of you, knowing how far we have gone, how much is the journey left, and what speed we are going?
Yep.
To me, that dashboard is nothing but equivalent to Property Dollar, which is on the offer. Knowing your numbers is the biggest attribute that I would like in my buyers to have.
Awesome.
Knowing how much money they have, how much is the equity they have made, and then, because the starting point where we are, we need to know those numbers. And then we can really track how the graphical representation really shows how it is going, so that we can extrapolate and see whether if it's not enough, then we can really do something. So to me, it's not only just giving the information, to me it is giving the insights that what person should do, whether they are overshooting or they're undershooting, as an example.
Awesome.
So it's a great offering. Love the product. Thank you for making
Thank
that.
you, Rasti. Thanks for the amazing information
My pleasure.
today.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.